We've finished covering leadership. Wapol, Dalton, Vivi, and Luffy. Now it's finally time to treat Nami and recruit one more crew member before making the final journey to Alabasta. But just because we're going to talk about sickness and doctors doesn't mean we can't cover some other very important topics. What is the new type of devil fruit we see? What does this 139-year-old know? And when does a man die? We're going to get a core theme of the entire series elucidated right in the middle of a saga to save an ancient kingdom. Get your tissues ready as we dive deep into the Grandeur of Alabasta. It was back in the East Blue that Oda first brought up the topic of disease, showing us scurvy as a real threat that sailors faced on the open seas. It wasn't some magic curse or bizarre super illness that had to be investigated and stopped just in the nick of time. It was just there. An oddly real threat in a world of the fantastical. And now that danger is affecting a crew member directly, and the rest of the crew are woefully unprepared to stop it. As Vivi says, even the most notorious pirates who sail the seas can suddenly get sick and die. A line that definitely needs to go into the chest. Nami was the only one with enough general seafaring knowledge to even slightly be able to address sickness, and she's out for the count. Sanji also rules out a nutrition-based illness like scurvy, as he's been taking extra care of Nami's nutrition. They have no knowledge on what this illness could be or how best to treat it. Oda is telling us that, hey, it's not about getting injured or making poor life decisions in regards to something like nutrition. Even if you're living a perfectly healthy life, battles notwithstanding, illness can come for you. Luffy, bless his silly rubber heart, doesn't understand getting sick, but all he knows is that a crewmate that he cares about is sick and he wants to make her better. That is his priority, so when they finally make it to the island and he hears the only doctor is on top of the mountain, he's determined to climb it to get Nami to her. Then we finally meet Dr. Kureha. We've heard only two things before this point. She's 139 and she comes and goes and takes as she pleases. But the woman that bursts onto the scene is certainly not what the crew envisioned. She looks wild, has piercings, wears 2 pairs of glasses, and despite the freezing weather, bears a midriff. She is energetic and alive, far more alive than a 139-year-old has any right to look. And she's accompanied by Tony Chopper. We then see her work, the absolute confidence of a master, immediately narrowing down what's wrong with the young boy, operating on him just as quickly and taking her leave, assured that she has succeeded. Then there are her actions outside of her doctoring. Despite it appearing as if she's acting with blatant disregard for her patient's well-being, she obviously really cares about treating the sick. She lives atop a mountain in a castle far away from town, but as soon as she's caught wind of a child who won't stop crying, she descends from the mountain to treat him. Though her payment may seem a little extreme, that's a real smile she gives when the boy thanks her. Her line, "What I did just now, don't ever forget it," there's an additional word that's missing from the English. This is one of the few times I'll refer to the SBS, Oda's question and answer section of One Piece, and that is happiness. The happiness the boy feels from becoming well, from receiving the doctor's treatment. Don't forget that. The father's material wealth doesn't matter in the face of a deadly disease. The simple joy of not being sick is what matters most. His father being concerned that his son's crying was bothering his customers, not the fact that his first priority should have been seeking treatment for his son. Kureha doesn't want him to forget that his son's health and happiness should be first. That's who Dr. Kureha is. That's what a doctor should be. That is, at least, one of the mentors of Tony Chopper. Speaking of whom, despite being in the background of this scene, Oda is subtly showing the audience that Chopper is more than just a reindeer. He prepares and delivers a basin of water, he can recognize and retrieve antibiotics, and knows how to administer an injection. We haven't learned what Chopper is just yet, but Oda is hinting that he's more than he appears. But most importantly is his reaction when the townsfolk accuse Kureha. I'm not sure what kind of sound effect Veen is, but Chopper is mad. Saying that a doctor takes advantage of people's weaknesses is clearly a sore spot for him. Finally, the meta point of this scene: diseases can be hidden. Scurvy had scars reopened, teeth falling out. It was clear that something was wrong. Even Nami is obviously unwell with a high fever. But this boy? He's just crying. People assume that he fell down or something minor, but as Dr. Kureha asks, "Are you a doctor?" In this arc, it's not just obvious diseases that will be treated, but ailments that hide beneath the surface. Eventually, through many trials and tribulations, Luffy makes it to the castle, rescued by Chopper, who was looking a little different. Oda has packed a lot into this short arc about leaders and doctors, and he's always making sure to further expand the world in which the story takes place. To that end, Oda has introduced a new family of devil fruit, the Zoan family. He first introduces it via Dalton, eater of the Ox fruit bison model, a fruit that allows the user to transform either partially or fully into a bison. It's an odd naming convention compared to the Gum fruit or the Chop fruit. It implies the existence of other Ox fruits. Immediately, this raises the question, well, if there's a fruit that turns you into an ox, is there a fruit that can turn you into a human? And, just as immediately, Oda tells us, yes. Chopper has eaten the human fruit, which, as Dr. Kureha puts it, enables him to do anything a human can do. Though something is a bit strange when compared to Dalton's bison fruit. When Dalton transforms into his bison form, nary a trace of his human form remains. However, when Chopper transforms into his human form, he still retains a fair amount of his reindeer features. Sure, he's lost his horns and his hooves have turned into hands and feet, but he's still got his nose and he's still quite furry. With only one fruit so far to go off, we can't be sure, but let's put in the chest for now the fact that, when eating a human fruit, your fully transformed form retains the likeness of your original self, unlike, potentially, other Zoan fruits. When we get to see Chopper fight, we learn more about Zoan fruits, and about their apparent limitations. Zoan fruits have three forms: their untransformed state, their hybrid state, and their fully transformed state. Chopper, however, through his own effort and intelligence, immediately breaks through that apparent limitation and shows us that Zoan fruits are capable of more than just these three forms. He's managed to unlock these forms using his Rumble Ball medicine, but who knows? Additional Zoan forms made available via the Rumble Ball may be able to be achieved without it. We'll just have to wait and see. But enough about Chopper's devil fruit abilities. Let's talk about the reindeer himself. It is clear that he's not a fan of humans, Kureha notwithstanding, out of what appears to be an overabundance of caution. This in and of itself is immediately interesting, as Chopper, in his first proper introductory page, is clearly a doctor. Not as skilled as Kureha, who is so experienced she can measure a temperature to 2 decimal places with just the tip of her finger, but still skilled enough to diagnose and potentially operate on Sanji, and recognize what Kureha is treating when she lists the medicine she needs. Kureha even tells Nami that she's taught Chopper all of her medical skills. So why would he treat humans if he clearly doesn't like them? In order to answer that question and to really flesh out who Chopper is, we need to split him into three, much like a Zoan fruit. There is who Chopper first was in his flashback, the Chopper by the time Luffy first meets him, and the Chopper at the end of the arc when he joins the crew. When Luffy meets Chopper, he's kind, cautious, medically brilliant, but otherwise naive. He reacts very emotionally and wears his emotions on his metaphorical sleeve. He doesn't trust humans, but he still wants to help them. He's interested in pirates, potentially even becoming one, but he lacks the self-confidence. He thinks that other people despise him because of what he is and how he looks. As Kureha tells Nami, Chopper bears a hidden wound, a wound on his heart. Another wound that cannot be seen, a wound that she challenges Nami and, by extension the crew, to heal. Oda then shows us the core of Chopper, what Chopper wants, or rather what he needs. He, really, just wants a friend. He wants a family to call his own. His birth family rejected him for how he looked, then humans rejected him for the same reason. That's the cause of the wound on his heart. This is who Chopper first was. And the first doctor to start mending that wound was... well, was he a doctor? Kureha calls him a quack, but that quack was none other than Dr. Hiriluk, the man who named Chopper and treated him like a son. I think it's important that Nami is the one told this. After all, she knows what it's like to have someone that isn't your birth parent name you and, in her case, treat her like a daughter. Now we step 6 years into the past and we get to see who Chopper was, but also who Hiriluk was, the man that shaped and began to heal Chopper's heart. In the last part, we were shown the methods of leadership, power and feelings. Now we see a different dichotomy: skill and heart. Dr. Hiriluk is the personification of the heart of a doctor. He has little more than the most basic of skill. He can at least patch up an injured chopper, but beyond that, he causes more harm than good, at least in terms of physically curing the ill. But an overwhelming amount of heart is what is needed to heal Chopper, to break down the defenses the poor reindeer has erected to protect his damaged heart. When Chopper, scared of being shot once again, beats Hiriluk into the ground, Hiriluk's response is, "What does he think I am? Not who, but what." Oda is showing us through Hiriluk what the heart, the mindset of a doctor should be, and what Chopper's mindset is after being raised by Hiriluk. So when Hiriluk bellows out, "I'd never shoot you, I am a physician," Oda is telling us, to the injured, to the sick, when operating in your capacity as a doctor, even if being attacked by your patient, the heart of a doctor means you would never, intentionally, hurt them. The more we see of Hiriluk, the more depth we get of this view. Kureha may have been able to diagnose and treat the physically sick, but Hiriluk has identified and is treating the non-physical. When Chopper is worried about talking because it's weird for reindeers to talk, Hiriluk, in a very Luffy-like way, says, "So what? I can talk too, and better than you." He says it directly, that you have been alright from the very start. He gives Chopper a name, making sure that he isn't seen as an it, but as a person. Hiriluk groups Chopper in with himself, albeit as fugitives. Hiriluk fights with Chopper as an equal. He gives him a gift. He, frankly, roasts him as only a friend can. Over the course of a year, Hiriluk gives Chopper a place to belong. He quite literally teaches Chopper how to laugh. He became the found family that Chopper never had. Sadly, though Hiriluk has patched up Chopper's physical wounds, he doesn't have enough time to complete the treatment on Chopper's wounded heart. Much like another found father, Hiriluk can't communicate directly with Chopper. He's so worried about his imminent death negatively affecting Chopper that Hiriluk tries to drive him away. But if Chopper has learned anything from Hiriluk over this last year, it's a single-minded determination to complete a task. So without a word, Chopper leaves to search for a cure for Hiriluk's disease. He bravely faces the pain of his past, literally taking the rejection he experienced from his birth family head-on, all in an attempt to save his new found family. And as far as Chopper knows, he succeeds. Battered and broken, he completes what he has set his mind to and delivers the Amyodake mushroom to Hiriluk. But just as we learned that a leader is incomplete focusing purely on feelings or on power, we are shown that a doctor is incomplete without both heart and skill. You can have the heart of a doctor, you can wish to save every patient, you can try your best to do what's right, but without the knowledge and skill, you may end up causing more harm than good. Heart is good. A big heart, as Hiriluk says, is an important qualification for being a doctor, and it's a big heart that is best suited for curing wounds of the heart. But a big heart isn't enough to cure the truly physically sick. Though it's not all bad, Hiriluk takes Chopper's remedy, and truly he looks better, though he sacrificed his scant few remaining weeks of life. With less than an hour left, his smile is big and his face is bright. It's important to note that he drinks Chopper's deadly soup before finding the cherry blossom solution. He was so afraid of dying before being able to fulfill his dream that he threatened Kureha to extend his life just a few more weeks. But when Chopper appears before him with something that will kill him within an hour of eating it, he doesn't hesitate. Sure, thankfully his cherry blossom solution attempt he made just before drinking the soup succeeds, but upon seeing Chopper's heart, the heart of a doctor, it means he knows that even though he may physically perish, and even if he doesn't successfully fulfill his dream, he knows that a part of him will live on. Hiriluk's final speech is one of One Piece's all-time great speeches. It encapsulates and solidifies something that has been present in the story since the beginning, and it shapes our understanding of the story and the world going forward. And because I love it so much, I'm just going to read it straight. When does a man die? Is it when he's shot in the heart with a pistol? No. When he's stricken with a deadly disease? No. When he eats soup made from a deadly mushroom? No. It is when he is forgotten. I may disappear, but my dream will live on, and the ailing hearts of the people will be healed. Someone will continue my work. Soon a monster will appear. He is my son. Don't hurt him. Ha! What a life it was! And what a set of last words they were. There's a few layers to this speech, so let's go through them. First, I'll say that a lot of people stop this speech at the "it's when he is forgotten" part, but the second half is just as important. Why? Because despite Hiriluk mentioning Chopper, albeit not by name, and also fully and tear-inducingly solidifying that he saw Chopper as his son, he doesn't mention Chopper as being the one to continue his work and fulfill his dream. Rather, Chopper definitively is not the one to fulfill Hiriluk's dream of healing the hearts of the Drum Kingdom. The two who end up fulfilling that dream when we skip to the end of the arc are Dalton, whose heart is so moved by Hiriluk that he turns his back on Wapol and recognizes that the heart of a nation is so important and he does his best to protect it, and then finally Dr. Kureha, who implements Hiriluk's cure, which causes cherry blossoms to bloom on Drum Island, fulfilling Hiriluk's life work. Next, it's the context in which the speech is delivered. It's an outlaw, someone bearing a pirate flag, saying it to a corrupted king, an oppressive royalty whose castle stands atop a high mountain, the symbolism and foreshadowing of which I just cannot get into without spoilers. But it is really neat that in the frame when he tells the corrupt ruler, "You can't kill me," Hiriluk's Jolly Roger is in full view. Then it's Hiriluk's death itself. He knows he's about to die, yet, just like Luffy and just like Roger, he's got a giant smile on his face. Smoker said that Luffy and Roger's reaction to being about to die were different, and he pursued Luffy to the Grand Line because it reminded him of Roger, and we see Hiriluk with the same expression. And he wears that smile because he knows that despite physically dying, he will live on. But what's the word we should use to describe what of him lives on? There's one place to find it, the chapter's title, Carrying On His Will. Although, if you weren't one for reading chapter titles, there's one more place to find this word, the last chapter of the arc and Dr. Kureha's final words of the arc. As she looks at Luffy's bounty poster, she asks, "Have you heard of Gol D. Roger?" Dalton is, of course, confused. He thinks she must have misspoken. He, just like the readers, have only heard of Gold Roger. As she muses that Chopper may be in for more than just an average pirate journey, she leaves us with one final sentence. So the will of D lives on. Just as Chopper inherits the will of Hiriluk to cure every disease, a will that is separated from his dream to cure his home island, Gold D. Roger and also Monkey D. Luffy have inherited a different kind of will, one that is symbolized with their middle initial. We do not yet know what that will is, or if Luffy is even aware of what it is, but the fact that both Luffy and Roger reacted the same way to imminent execution, there is an unseen something, this will of D, that does link the two in some way. But perhaps Roger knew about this. Let's dip into the treasure chest to look at his quote once more. An inherited strength of will. Did Roger perhaps know about the will of D? More than this, I understand this tangent is getting further and further away from Hiriluk, but as I alluded to before, the closer we get to Alabasta, the further we go into the past, and the more information gets revealed to us. First Crocus and his hint that Roger was waiting for a crew, then seeing the giants and their ancient strength, now Kureha, 139 years old, revealing Roger's real and seemingly forgotten name, and something called the Will of D. What more about the past will be revealed when we finally make it to Alabasta? Only time will tell. So let's throw the Will of D and Hiriluk's speech into the treasure chest for later and go back to Hiriluk. We were talking about will. Now that we have a word for it, I think it's important to draw a distinction between someone's will and someone's dream. I mentioned it earlier, Hiriluk's dream to make cherry blossoms bloom on Drum Island is fulfilled by Dalton and Kureha, though Chopper obviously also played a part. Hiriluk's will is what Chopper inherits, the will to cure any and all diseases even if others say it's impossible. I see the difference as this: a dream is a measurable goal, even if it seems impossible. A will is an outlook, a spirit, a way of living. This will of D has a seemingly obvious symbol, the middle D initial that Roger and Luffy share, and Hiriluk's will also has an obvious symbol, his flag, his adopted pirate skull and crossbones which rejects impossibility and is a symbol of Hiriluk's faith that the impossible can be done. Chopper, distraught at his father's death, knows he is lacking. He was taught many important things by Hiriluk, but even being naive, Chopper isn't stupid. If he truly wants to cure any disease, if he really wants to become a doctor, then he needs the skill to be one. So he faces rejection once more for the sake of Hiriluk, and waving the symbol of Hiriluk's will, a flag that rejects impossibilities, he petitions Kureha to teach him medicine. He will become the miracle cure that can cure everything, even if he thinks he's just a reindeer, just a monster. Finally, we leave the flashback and return to the present, and we get to see Chopper's journey to what he becomes by the end of the arc. The symbol of Hiriluk's will is no longer hidden on the wall of a cave, but proudly displayed atop the highest point of Drum Island. Under its auspices, Chopper has already been taking on the impossible in his journey to become a doctor, and Wapol has the audacity to try and shoot it down. Luffy is, as always, Luffy. And he, simply by being himself, speedruns curing Chopper's wounded heart. He's already taken a shine to Chopper, showing us a third reason Luffy recruits people, because he finds them cool and or interesting. Though Luffy uses the word monster, which is a sore spot for Chopper, Luffy means it in a descriptive way without any negative connotations. Monsters are cool, and Luffy is used to being called a monster and a freak ever since he ate the Gum Gum fruit. As Sanji says to Chopper with a smile on his face, Luffy is basically a monster. So when Wapol shoots down the flag, Luffy, as he does with anyone he's taken a shine to, notices that the flag is important to Chopper, so that immediately takes priority for him, and he goes to fix it. Luffy, also in classic Luffy fashion, has no idea about the history of this specific flag, but he does know what it means to fly the skull and crossbones. He knows what it means to be a pirate. It reminds me of the two lessons we learned back in the East Blue. Being a pirate means putting your life on the line, something Luffy said to Nami when they first met, and Luffy's dislike of fraud pirates, similar to his attitude towards Kuro. We haven't really seen Luffy's attitude towards the Skull and Crossbones flag specifically, only that he was excited to have his own, back when the crew first got the Merry. Now we see, just like Hiriluk, Luffy sees the pirate flag, one that is flown seriously, not as a joke like Wapol's was, as a symbol of faith. One that, to him, is unbreakable. A flag so important that it is not something to be laughed at or shot at. Let's throw that panel into the chest for later. Seeing Luffy both protect Hiriluk's flag at the expense of his own safety and talk about the flag with the same reverence that Hiriluk did, it lights a fire in Chopper and once more goes towards mending Chopper's heart. The next thing that Luffy does, he calls Chopper his friend. As Chess Marimo goads Chopper about being lonely and despised, Chopper remains resolute to fight, despite not having any friends. And Luffy immediately shuts that down. You have a friend right here. But it's not as simple as that one panel. It's not as simple as Luffy calling himself Chopper's friend. Chopper has seen what Luffy will do for a friend. When Luffy made it to the castle carrying both Sanji and Nami, freezing and bloodied and on death's door, he grabbed Dr. Kureha and made sure she knew they were his friends. He made it up there for them. Luffy calling Chopper his friend means something, and Chopper knows it. Finally, after Wapol is defeated, Chopper faces Luffy. Despite being in view of the flag rejecting impossibilities, Chopper thinks he could never be a pirate, no matter how much he wants to. I love that Oda shows Nami here, the one that knows this feeling. Back when she stole the Merry and wished she could stay with Luffy and the crew, she cried because she thought it was impossible. Her circumstances and reasons were different, but she had wounds on her heart all the same. But sometimes, a wounded heart needs a stubborn rubber man to cut through the excuses. In true Luffy fashion, it doesn't matter what you are. If he likes you, he wants you to join him. It also, frankly, doesn't matter what you can do. Luffy had no idea that Chopper was a doctor. Luffy just cares about you being you. Kureha is such a softie. She talks mean, but it's obvious that she has a kind heart, though I'm not sure if it's Luffy or Nami who says it. She is a doctor after all. She tests Chopper, of course, making sure that he has no lingering doubts about leaving, but once she's sure he's ready, well, it's time to chase him out and throw knives at him. Seriously, why can't all these mentors just say what they mean? But of course, she can't. Much like Hiriluk, though she doesn't say it to Chopper, she saw Chopper as more than just an assistant. He became her adopted son, and it's hard to see your kid grow up and leave you. So in a grand farewell, in order to let Chopper know that no, nothing is impossible for those flying the flag of the crossbones, Hiriluk's cure brings the island together and becomes a symbol for a healed nation, and it shows Chopper that yes, even a reindeer can become a pirate. The crew sails off, celebrating their new crew member, and Chopper joins in with the festivities. He's found a place that he belongs. He's found his new family. The wounds on his heart have finally sealed. As the arc wraps up, Oda prepares us for the final destination of the saga. We're finally going to make it to Alabasta. Things are getting more complicated as a mysterious and unfamiliar man, someone pursuing Blackbeard, is going to be waiting for Luffy in Alabasta, and his name is Ace. Bon Clay, sent to assassinate Mr. 3 after Sanji's deception back in Little Garden, is speeding back to Alabasta, and he'll surely be using an eternal pose just like the crew, putting him on a potential collision course. And pirates have landed in the Desert Kingdom, which, hilariously to me, the island itself is called Sandy Island, though the kingdom is called Alabasta. And Crocodile is about to show himself to crush them. I'm excited to land in Alabasta next part, but what about these last two parts? What did I miss in covering Drum Island? I know I went on a long tangent with the Will of D and all of that, but this really is the arc that introduces and solidifies the concept of an inherited will, and I can't just skip over that. I was going to mention how Hiriluk also ends up influencing the 20 doctors that left the island with Wapol, and also how Hiriluk was just so happy that no one was actually sick, but it didn't really fit into the script, and we'd already established what the heart of a doctor is, so while it's a great moment, it didn't really need to be mentioned. Maybe I should have mentioned that we briefly see Kaya starting her journey to become a doctor, establishing that she has the same kind of heart? Either way, I love hearing from you, since it's not I attempt new things, it's we attempt new things. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a fruitful day.